Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing good. In this video, I am going to look at the novel Great Expectations, which is written by Charles Dickens. Personally, this novel is one of the best novels I have ever read because it is so interesting and it has so many interesting elements in the novel. I am not going to talk about each chapter in this video, but I am going to look at the plot and maybe a short summary if possible. So the novel Great Expectations is written by Charles Dickens, and it was uh, first published serially in 1860 to 61 and issued in book form. It was only issued in book form in 1861. It talks about this coming of age of the orphan that is the main character, Pirrip, while addressing such issues as social class and human worth. If we look at the summary, Pirrip, popularly known as Pip, narrates the tale from an unspecified time in the future. He grows up in the marshlands of Kent, where he lives with his sister. He has a very strict sister and her sweet-natured husband, Joe Gargery. As we look at the title, remember each character has its own expectation, great expectations. So remember that the title is also significant in the sense that each character in the novel has expectation or expectations. Even Pirrip. Again, if we look at the summary, while visiting his family's members' graves in the churchyard, the young Pip encounters a convict by the name Abel Magwitch. He is an escaped convict. Pip brings him food and a file, but the fugitive and compassion, his former partner in crime and a supposed gentleman who is now his enemy, are soon caught. And later, Pip is requested to pay visits to Miss Havison, a woman driven half-mad years earlier by his lover's departure on their wedding day. Let us look at the plot of the novel. Great Expectations is a bildungsroman. Bildungsroman is a story of the growth and development of its main character. Dickens presents the ambition to improve oneself that drives Pip along with many of the novel's secondary characters as a force capable of generating both positive and negative results. Plot of the novel. Pirrip is a young orphan, lives with his sister, Mrs. Joe, and her husband, Joe Gargery, in the marshes of Kent, in a village. Pip sits in the cemetery. As note opens, he sits in the cemetery one evening, looking at his parents' tombstones. Suddenly, an escaped convict by the name Abel Magwitch springs up from behind a tombstone, grabs Pip and orders him to bring him food and a file. A file is not the file we talk about in terms of books, but a file to free the convicts. Remember they are chained, so to unchain them. Pip obeys, but the fearsome convict is soon captured anyway. The convict protects Pip by claiming to have stolen the items himself. And later on, Pip is taken to Miss Havisham's house to play by his uncle Pumblechook. Remember, even his uncle Pumblechook, he is not really concerned for the welfare of Philip Pirrip, but he is doing that, or he is taking Pip to Miss Havisham's house to play with the thought that he will also get something by doing that. Maybe from Miss Havisham, or if Pip gets something, he will also get some share from Pip. Sati's house is the house of Miss Havisham. She is living there, and remember, she was rejected by her soon-to-be husband at the last minute. He is treated coldly by Estella, that is Pip. Pip is treated coldly by Estella. Regardless of that, Pip falls in love with her and tries to win her heart by becoming a gentleman. So here it's kind of really interesting in the sense that Pip is born and brought up in a village, Kent, and he has fallen in love with Estella. However, Estella is really cold towards his feelings, and with that he starts thinking about how he will be able to win Estella's heart, and he came up with the thought that if he becomes a gentleman, wears tuxedos, read books, get educated, then he will be able to marry Estella. So that is his expectations. So he tries to win her heart by becoming a gentleman. That is Pip's great expectation. One day, a lawyer named Jaggers appears with strange news. A secret benefactor has given Pip a large fortune, and Pip must go to London immediately to begin his education as a gentleman. Out of nowhere, a lawyer by the name Jaggers appears with this unusual news, saying that someone has, left something for Pip, a large fortune, and he has to go to London immediately and start his education and become a gentleman. So basically, if you are educated, if you wear expensive clothes, you are a gentleman, or you are already a gentleman. Pip happily assumes that his previous hopes have come true, that Miss Havisham is his secret benefactor, and that the old woman intends for him to marry Estella. Nobody knows who the secret benefactor is. That secret benefactor wanted to be, unknown, or not to be made public, its name. However, Pip assumes that the fortune was through Miss Havisham, and with that thought, he believes that now Miss Havisham has finally agreed to allow Estella and me to get married. and that is why she has given a large fortune. That is what Pip believes. In London, Pip befriends a young gentleman named Herbert Pocket and Jagger's law clerk Wemmick. Herbert and Pip lead a fairly undisciplined life in London, enjoying themselves and running up debts. Uh, they're not really. Pip is misusing the fortune. Several years go by until one night a familiar figure barges into Pip's room, and he is none other than the convict Magwitch, who stuns Pip by announcing that he, not Miss Havisham, is the source of Pip's fortune. So this becomes really interesting in the sense that right from the beginning, Pip thought that his benefactor was none other than Miss Havisham, but now the fact is laid bare right in front of him by his benefactor, and he is none other than Magwitch, Abel Magwitch, who is the convict. And Philip is stunned. He is taken aback. He tells Pip that he was so moved by Pip's boyhood kindness. Remember, in the beginning, Pip met the convict around the graveyard, and the convict threatened Pip to bring, a file, something to eat, and a drink. And, the convict did not actually expect Pip to return. However, Pip returned with everything what the convict asked for. So he was so moved by Pip's kindness that he dedicated his life to making Pip a gentleman, and he made a fortune in Australia for that very purpose. Pip is appalled, but he feels morally bound to help Magwitch escape London, as the convict is pursued both by the police and by Compassion, his former partner in crime. As we move on, a complicated mystery begins to fall into place when Pip discovers that Compassion was the man who abandoned Miss Havisham at the altar, and that Estella is Magwitch's daughter. So now, a complicated mystery is finally unraveled. Remember, before 20 minutes to 9, Miss Havisham was abandoned by a man who was about to be her husband. And that man, now it's revealed, and he is none other than Compassion, the partner of Abel Magwitch. Miss Havisham has raised her to break men's hearts as revenge for the pain her own broken heart caused her. Pip was merely a boy for the young Estella to practice on. Miss Havisham delighted in Estella's ability to toy with his affections. After Miss Havisham was abandoned by her soon-to-be husband, she decided not to marry, and he adopted Estella to break men's heart. Estella marries an upper-class lord named Bentley Drummle. Pip makes a visit to Satie's house, where Miss Havisham begs his forgiveness for the way she has treated him in the past, and he forgives her. Later that day, when she bends over the fireplace, her clothing catches fire, and she goes up in flames. Um, we can safely say that Miss Havison is forgiven for what she did to Pip, and we can safely say that she has finally found her way and she is now dead. She survives but becomes an invalid. In her final days, she will continue to repent for her misdeeds and to plead for Pip's forgiveness. As the novel moves on, Magwitch is sentenced to death and Pip loses his fortune. Magwitch feels that his sentence is God's forgiveness and dies peacefully. After that, Pip falls ill. Joe comes to London to care for him, and they are reconciled. Joe gives him the news from home. Orlick, after robbing Pumblechook, is now in jail. Miss Havisham has died and left most of her fortune to the pockets. Biddy has taught Joe how to read and write. After Joe leaves, Pip decides to rush home after him and marry Biddy. But when he arrives there, he discovers that Biddy and Joe have already married. Pip, happily ran home with the thought that okay, I'll marry Biddy. But it was too late for him. Pip decides to go abroad with Herbert to work in the mercantile trade. Returning many years later, he encounters Estella in the ruined garden at Sati's house. Drummle, her husband, treated her badly, but he is now dead. Pip finds that Estella's coldness and cruelty have been replaced by a sad kindness, and the two leave the garden hand in hand, Pip believing that they will never part again. The novel ends with Pip and Estella holding each other's hand and leaving the garden. However, it is unclear. We're not sure whether, they got married or something like that. It is for the readers to decide. They promise each other that they will always remain friends and they will never leave each other, and they held each other's hand and left the garden. Again, if we look at the novel and analyze it, Great Expectation, it works on a number of levels. For example, like number one is a critique of Victorian society, and as an sort of an exploration of memory and writing. It is also perhaps more importantly a search for true identity. During the course of the novel, Pip comes to realize that his great expectations, social standing, and wealth are less important than loyalty and compassion. Great Expectations was also noted for its blend of humor, mystery, and tragedy. In the original ending of the work, Pip and Estella were not reunited, but Dickens was persuaded to, write a happier conclusion. So the novel which we're reading is the latest one, and, the novel was an immediate success. So this is it. I will talk more about it in the next class. Thank you, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.